What's up everybody, I'm Derek, this is Rocking eForge, and today is part 5 of Weird Weapons of History, a series where I research and briefly discuss interesting historical edged weapons that I think are pretty unique. Now I'm feeling pretty under the weather right now, so if I sound froggy or a little different, that would be why. I apologize in advance, but I gotta stay on that weekly video posting schedule, so bear with me. Today's Weird Weapon of History is the second weapon on this series from Africa. Man, between the Indian subcontinent and Africa, we've got two major contenders for having the most unique weapons made throughout history. The Ngulu is a very unique sickle-shaped blade made primarily from iron, but moving to steel in more recent years, or in the later years of the Central African people that used them. It is attributed to the people of what is modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo. However, the names of the people who made or used the Ngulu are inconsistent across the sources that I've found. Some suggest that the people were named Ngombe, which is why the blade is typically called the Ngombe Ngulu. However, there are many sources that suggest that that Ngombe is simply the language of the people that live there, and to avoid spreading misinformation, I'm going to simply omit attempting to name the people who used the Ngulu and move on. Now, there are many sources that I used to research this blade, and I've included the links in the description. However, a lot of them are either very sparse on information or contradictory to each other, so it's hard to tell what is or isn't accurate for this blade, so I'm going to try to just put out everything that I have found in my research and try to avoid any major misinformation. Now, I couldn't find a time frame for when this weapon was originally implemented by the people of Central Africa. However, many of the pieces that are held in museums are from the late 1800s to early 1900s, which gives us at least a time frame for when they were most heavily used or when they were typically exported, imported, etc. to Europe or the various areas where the museums got them from. Now, the reason I chose the Ngulu as today's Weird Weapon of History is simply the striking appearance of the blade itself. The asymmetrical sickle shape of this blade is very interesting to look at. Each side of most blades were engraved by hand, very intricate designs, very interesting kind of ladder patterns or designs down the lengths of the blade, which holds with the logic of these blades being used in a ceremonial capacity almost exclusively, and the handles themselves were also very ornate, typically made using either wrapped wire or wrapped leather, and then with two either spherical or lens-shaped buttons or ornaments on the pommel, which kind of makes up a very unique blade. There are also some very rare examples of double-bladed or double-edged versions of this weapon, but these tend to be few and far between and only held at select museums, which suggests that production of this style of the Ngulu was very limited. However, they are very interesting and very unique looking, and it's very cool to see how creative the bladesmiths were at the time. Now, as far as specific history goes, the sources that I found did not have a lot of specific numbers, years, very specific peoples, etc. But we do know that the Ngulu originated in Central Africa, around the area of what is modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo, and it is known to have been used as a status symbol for war chiefs or tribal leaders of the area. It's also been known to have been implemented into ceremonial dances of the peoples of the area. It was also a very common trade item to Europeans traveling through Central Africa, which is where much of the controversial views of the blades came from. And we're going to get into that controversy now. Some sources of the early 1900s, late 1800s that suggest that the Ngulu was used as an executioner's knife or for animal or human sacrifice, and also associated with cannibalism. Now, many sources seem to suggest that there was no real evidence of this. There are descriptions of executions, and I'm not going to go into that for this video, but there are many sources that suggest that this view of the Ngulu and of the people that used them were completely unfounded and born more out of lack of understanding of the peoples of Central Africa and of xenophobia than anything founded in, actual truth. Which is unfortunate because the ornate beauty of these blades is something to behold in and of itself. Now, regardless of whether or not these blades were used for executions, early on, some sources do still suggest that any practice of executions tapered very quickly, and they remained a very valuable status symbol and ceremonial blade for generations. As for how these blades could have been wielded, almost every photograph I find of them suggests, based on the orientation of the sickle itself, that there's a bevel or an edge on that, on the outer edge of the sickle all the way down to the handle or to the hilt. I did find one photo, however, that depicts a person from Central Africa holding an Ngulu in the way that I just described, which would suggest that the leading edge would be the outer edge of that sickle and would be swung in much the same way as an Egyptian khopesh. Now, just to be completely clear, I found no concrete evidence that the Ngulu was used in either combat or for executions. I am simply making an educated guess as to how it could have been used if it came to actually using the blade. Now, the Ngulu has not been featured, to my knowledge, in many pop culture references. However, it did come up in Forged in Fire as the final round weapon of season 4, episode 12 of the show, in which they used the outer edge of that blade. I don't speak to the accuracy of how they make or use those blades on the show. However, if you're looking for examples of these blades in more popular culture, that's about the only one that I could find. Now, even though the Ngulu seems to be purely ceremonial in nature, and there seems to be maybe some evidence that the blades themselves were not fully sharpened, I think it will be a very interesting and challenging blade shape to forge in the future, and I do plan to put that edge on the outer edge or outer curve of that sickle, unless there are people in the comments that can give me better sources for where and how these blades were used. As I previously discussed, the amount of information available for this blade and the people that used them was very slim, and this video, as a result, was fairly difficult to kind of put together, since there's a lot of sources that contradict each other and just very limited information overall. So if you have more sources or knowledge of these blades yourself, please let me know in the comment section. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. If you want to support me in the channel further, please consider becoming an honorary striker on my Patreon. Link is in the description below the video. And as always, keep on rocking.